For instance, the Odessan King, who was the leader of the Jewish revolt, his name was Jesus Manu, Jesus Emmanuel, and he wore a crown of thorns because the traditional crown of the Odessan monarchy was a crown of thorns. Again, we get these elements of the same story flowing through it.
I was hoping you weren't going to go here. So there's no relationship between Yeshua and if you're going to say it's the Persian, the only similarity is in their English transliteration, not actually. We can't do sound alike equals the same.
Well, yes, you can, because what's Jesus called in Arabia? What's in Arabic? What's his name?
No, so that's a mistake made by Muhammad that you should not follow. Isa bin Maryam. Isa bin Maryam is not what. I'm going to give evidence to this. If you know Arabic-speaking Christians, they don't call him Isa because they understand that just means Esau. They call him Yesu or Yeshua. That's Jesus in Arabic. Muhammad misnamed Jesus, and Muslims fall to this day. But Christians who speak Arabic know it's not right. So you're making a mistake that Muhammad made. No, Isa bin Maryam is incorrect. Now, it is how Muslims identify him, but it's not the proper way to say his name in Arabic.
So you say, but when I was in Syria...
No. This is something I know directly. So I attended an Arabic church for quite some time and still have a number of friends who are Arabic speakers from a number of places, especially Syria, Egypt, and Assyria, which has no country, but from where the Assyrians are in the Middle East. When you talk to them about this, they'll tell you this. This is not really a debatable point. That Isa bin Maryam is it's something you shouldn't follow Muhammad in his mistake.
No, when I was in Syria, everybody called Jesus Issa. That was the general name they gave
that's because they're Muslims, so they're going to follow Muhammad's mistake, just like they think Alexander the Great is in the Quran. There's all kinds of mistakes he makes, like Jesus speaking from the crib, Jesus not getting crucified. You might actually like that one. All kinds of mistakes in the Quran that you don't want to follow.
Names, then you're admitting that people can have different names.
No, I'm admitting that Muhammad had another misunderstanding in relation to who Jesus was, including his name, and that's why he called him Isa, but it's not correct Arabic because he did not really understand what he was looking at. Everything Muhammad is doing is hearing stuff. By their own admission, he's illiterate, so he's not reading some text. In fact, at that time, we don't have any evidence that there was full New Testament translations in Arabic during that time in 7th century Arabia when he's coming up with these things in the cave. So that's not what it is. It would be Yesu, not Isa. So it's not correct. But that has that's way over here. That has nothing to do with back here making Jesus the king of Edessa.
Oh, well, it would, because they were influenced, of course, mainly by the East, not so much by the West. Remember, Edessa is in Mesopotamia. It's across the Euphrates, so it's not very close to Judea. So, yeah, they had different influences there. And remember that the Odessan church in India also calls him Issa. They use the same title. And as far as I know, that comes from the original Odessans who went to India, not from the Arabic traditions from later times. There was a tradition that Jesus was called Issa. And the reason they got that name is because his original name was Isis, which was a Persian type Parthian name. It wasn't a Judean name. And
so you brought up when you were in Syria, right? And is it true, you're talking about, you heard different speakers and stuff. Is it true that, is this true or is this something that's not true? That there is some younger boys who were giggling and laughing and you asked them why, and they said it's because you look like Issa. Is that true?
Yes, that's true.
So some Arabic speaking boys in Syria were laughing because when you asked them why, it's because you look like Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because he was ginger haired. Yeah.
But you don't have any hair. Did you have hair at the time?
Oh, no, he wasn't talking about me. He was talking about his friend. His friend was ginger. I was sort of laughing at his friend because his friend had very ginger hair. He was Syrian. So did
his friend have a beard?
No, he didn't have a beard. He had ginger
But you
hair.
say that Jesus was ginger with a beard, and you use an image that is most likely Alexander the Great from the 5th century, and yet you claim it's one of the earliest images of Jesus. Why do you do that, Mr. Ellis?
because that's not Alexander the Great. Have you seen the image? Can I do a
Yes, I have. I actually have seen the image, and
let me do a screen share.
Ironically, I have it right here on my phone. Said image. It's right here. Now that's from the 5th century. So why would you say it's one of the earliest images of Jesus? If it's from the 5th century.
Well, they don't know the exact time. They date it between the 3rd and the 5th centuries.
Okay. So that's not one of the earliest images of Jesus, though. We have images of Jesus much earlier, and he's usually portrayed as a bearded youth in those instances. Is he not?
No, in Rome, he's normally clean shaven if you go to Rome.
I'm sorry, did I say bearded? A beardless.
Yes,
excuse me, you are correct about that. A beardless youth.
Yeah,
my point was that.
Indicating that he looks like Apollo, of course. But if you
yes, there is subversion of the Greek gods in some of the early Christian art. Don't deny that. But my point is, you're saying the earliest image is this, but it's not the earliest image. That's the whole point of why I brought that to you. So why do you say this is the earliest image? It's
one of the earliest images we have of Jesus.
But it's from the 5th century. We have things that are earlier than that.
Can I?
Yeah, I see it. It's on the screen.
Okay. Because again, like you, I can't see that it's actually. I can't see that it's sharing. Okay, so this is the Huqoq mosaic. This is what we're talking about. And this was claimed to be an image of Alexander the Great, but it's quite obviously not Alexander the Great, because he is wearing a Jewish payot, a side lock of hair. You can see on the side of his head there, he's wearing a side lock of hair. Alexander the Great was never bearded, and he wouldn't have worn a Jewish side lock of hair. So here we have a character who's obviously not Alexander the Great. So who is this character? He is Bar Kamsa from the Talmud. If you look up your story of Bar Kamsa, Bar Kamsa was the leader of the Jewish revolt. We're back at the Jewish revolt again, who was said to have given a sacrificial calf from Emperor Nero to the high priest of Jerusalem. And that's exactly what we see here. We have this king, and he is a king because he's wearing a diadem, a headband, and he's giving a sacrificial calf to the high priest of Jerusalem. And he was doing so in order to provoke the Jewish revolt, because he wanted this sacrificial calf to be refused by the high priesthood, because the calf was Gentile, and of course it would be refused by the high priesthood, which it was, which was done in order to anger Nero and precipitate the Jewish revolt. And you can see his army on the right-hand side here that's ready for battle. And at the bottom, well, you can't see it at the bottom here, but underneath, you can see this army was defeated. So we know that this is not Alexander the Great, because the army of Alexander the Great was never defeated, and he would not have worn a Jewish payot, side lock of hair. So who is this character? He is known as Bar Kamsa, the son of the locust. We're talking about locusts again. So quite obviously, he is, as the leader of the Jewish revolt, he is the king of Adiabeni Edessa, because they are linked or the same city. So he is the leader of the revolt, and he's dressed here in sort of Roman armor with a purple cloak. You remember the purple cloak from the crucifixion story, where Jesus was wearing a purple cloak. Why was he doing so? Well, because he was dressed as a king of Edessa. That's why we have this story. So we have these multiple links which you are not sort of looking at. But this is, if that's the case, then this, at the very, very least, this is the king of Edessa who was involved in the Jewish revolt. His name was Manu. Isis Manu. And if my theory is correct, then this is an image of Jesus, because he would have been the leader of the Jewish revolt. And note, he is ginger-haired. So we do have Syrian Mesopotamian people, because that, you know, Edessa is in Mesopotamia. We do have Mesopotamians who are ginger-haired. It was a phenotype in that era. So that is just simply more evidence that my theory is correct. And I'm sure you want to jump in there.
Yeah. There's elephants there.
Yes, there's elephants, yes.
Yeah. There's no Bible stories with elephants. Those battle elephants are associated with Greek armies like Alexander the Great.
Yeah, but Alexander the Great didn't wear a Jewish sidelock of hair, and his army wasn't defeated. So we know it's
Well,
not Alexander.
almost certainly, this is a depiction, which is probably a Jewish legend, where Alexander the Great meets the Jewish high priest. I'm sure you know that. In fact, this appears in Paul's writings. I mean, Josephus's writings, and in rabbinic literature. Yes.
Yeah, but it's quite obviously not Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was never bearded.
Wait,
and he wouldn't
quite
wear
obviously?
a sidelock of hair. Why has he got a sidelock of hair?
Well, hold on. You've got Jesus. You have Jesus, right? Who's sometimes portrayed bearded and sometimes beardless. So that's not going to do
Only in
anything
Rome,
there.
because they depicted him as Apollo. But as a Nazarene, of course, he would not be beardless. A Nazarene was not allowed to pull their hair, as you know.
Okay, so this is from the Huqoq synagogue, correct?
Yes.
Okay, they're going to portray Jesus. A synagogue is going to have an image of Jesus.
Well, Jesus was a Jew, you know that.
Yeah, he was considered a blasphemer who should be boiled in semen and feces, according to the Talmud. So I don't think they're going to have an image of him portraying him in a good old fashioned kind of this is a good guy kind of way.
This is obviously a Nazarene synagogue, because it has a zodiac on the floor. If you look at the other mosaics in the synagogue, it has a big zodiac on the floor. Now, the traditional Judean synagogues would not have zodiacs on the floor. Only the very esoteric ones would do, like the Nazarene, like the Hamatzvera zodiac on the Sea of the Shores of Galilee.
This evidence he's defeated in battle, what's your evidence again for that? I'm trying to understand.
It's the unfortunately, they didn't release the mosaic beneath this one, but beneath this one there is another mosaic which has this army being defeated. But they didn't release it, so I don't have that picture.
Okay, well, I'm not sure about that, but in this picture, he's not being defeated. In fact, one side has weapons, the other side has scrolls. Who do you think is going to win that battle?
And swords. Remember, the priesthood have got swords.
You got a couple young dudes with no armor on. They're going to defeat this guy with his war elephants. It's like Lord of the Rings out here.
No. They weren't defeated by these people. This is a depiction of the start of the Jewish revolt. This is the event that created the Jewish revolt, because it upset Nero, and therefore it precipitated the Jewish revolt. After the Jewish revolt, of course, which was won by Rome, not by the priesthood, this army was defeated because they lost the war against Rome. That's why they were crucified in AD 70, because they lost the Jewish revolt, and therefore the army was defeated.
But this story appears in Josephus, and it's Alexander the Great meeting.
Yeah, but only
meeting with the Jewish high priest. I mean, it's depicting what was in Josephus. So why are you saying you're trying to make it an event that no one records ever happening when Josephus actually records this event?
No, we know this event happened. It's in the Talmud. Look up the story of Bar Kamsa in the Talmud.
But
it's exactly this. It's exactly this story.
Okay, I got to be honest. I probably doubt that, but you have never established Bar Kamsa is Jesus, and you definitely haven't established that Jesus. I mean, you got to understand, part of your theory here is that Jesus is a white guy with red hair.
Yeah, and?
I mean, that's good old Anglo-Israelism, man.
No, not at all. I mean, who's this guy?
I know it's Ramses, but now why are we going over to Egyptians? Yeah. I mean, let's show the Nubian pharaohs then and see how you fare.
Yeah, I'm sure you can find the negative, but I'm looking at the positive.
What's negative about Nubian pharaohs, dude?
This is Ramesses II, and he was taken to Paris for preservation. And
he's buried in Paris, therefore he's the king of Paris, right?
No, they determined at the forensic labs there.
No, you're missing what I'm saying. You make an argument like that where you've got someone being buried in a place and therefore they were the queen of it.
I'm saying that he's ginger-haired. Who's this one? This is Cleopatra.
Okay.
She was ginger-haired. Who's this guy?
Supposed to be the great grandson of Muhammad. I know. I've seen these pictures.
Yes, and so
Muhammad is actually described in the Hadith as a white man. So, and now, what was he literally a white man or not is another question, or is that symbolic? But this does not answer the question about Jesus, the Jew. running around like Conor McGregor in the Middle East.
But
And
what it's proving is that these Mesopotamians can be white and ginger. This is a descendant of Muhammad. This is Muhammad al-Yaqubi.
It would make sense if it was Alexander, a European, being pictured. It doesn't make sense for Jesus. And it seems like you're working hard to try to turn Jesus into a white guy with red hair.
I'm not trying anything. These are Muslims. They are trying. They paint their hair ginger because they want to look like Muhammad. Why do they do that?
Well, then they should also marry a 6-year-old girl, but that has nothing to do with Jesus.
Because they think that Muhammad was ginger. That's why they do it. It's not me that's saying this. This is Muslims themselves who are saying it. And of course,
that has nothing to do with Alexander the Great's painting. And that guy probably plays great bass guitar. He looks like he's in a band or something. But what I'm saying is, bro, is this Jesus theory is no good evidence for it. Everything about this picture screams Alexander the Great with his war elephants meeting Jewish high priests, which is exactly a legend portrayed in Josephus. And you're turning it into something that there's no textual data for unless you switch names around and ignore things that are present in the image. And frankly, this is why no one thinks that. And when you've presented it in the past, you have been a bit slippery with the facts. This is the 5th century. It is not one of the earliest images of Jesus. I think you know that good and well. I have a great book I recommend to you called Face to Face by Robin Jensen, and it's Portraits of the Divine in Early Christianity. And in it, you have the Good Shepherd Catacomb of Callistus in Rome. You have all kind of early Christian images of the baptism of Christ. That's also in the same place. That's what that one is called. And it's important. I would encourage you to look these up. There's other biblical figures portrayed as well. Now we have 4th century Musea Pio Cristiano in Vatican City is Jesus healing and working wonders. You have that. These are all before your 5th century image of something that you're telling people is one of the earliest images of Jesus. Mr. Ellis, with all due respect, don't you see how that really calls into question your credibility and even character when you tell us a 5th century image of Alexander the Great is one of the earliest images of Jesus? Even if you think it is Jesus, it's not one of the earliest images, my friend. It's not. You should stop saying that.
Well, it's from the 3rd century. There are not many that
wait. 3rd century? Where's your evidence it's from the 3rd century here in this synagogue?
Well, I'd have to look that up for you, but they found some coins underneath it. So
well, Jody Magnus, professor North Carolina at Chapel Hill, who has a great book that I actually own in my library about Jesus and dirt and spit and all that. It's about this kind of stuff. It's a great stuff. And she has a lot of great work on that. She doesn't think so. And she's not the only one. I mean, the Israel Antiquities Authority, they don't think that. And I think they have good reasons. I don't think you have good reasons for what you're saying.
Sorry, I'm just busy looking something up. What you're disputing here is what this image is actually showing, which is what.
No, you're disputing it. I'm going along with experts who this is what they do. You're disputing it. I'm disputing what you say, but you're the one disputing what everyone knows about it. And again, it's not one of the earliest ones. You have a bust of Christ, Catacomb of Commedia, mid to late 4th century. I've got the picture right here.
All those already.
No, I didn't. I did not mention that one. I'm laying it on at this point. You have the mosaic portrait of Christ at Roman Via Hinton, St. Mary, and that's from the late 4th century. The reason why I'm laying these on is I'm showing you that these are all before the 5th century. You should not be saying, even if you thought it was Jesus, it's one of the earliest images of him. It's very dishonest. We have the statue of seated Christ, which is mid 4th century at the National Museum there in Rome, and that's supposed to be Christ as well. These are all before the 5th century, all of them. I'm sorry, 5th century. I'm not sure if I said 4th or 5th century. What's your evidence this is from the, what's your evidence this is earlier than the 5th century?
I would have to look that up because it.
But why do you say it if you don't know it?
Well, I do know it. I've written nearly 3,000 pages on this. I can't remember everything I've written. I'm just going to tell you what this actual scene is from. Now, Jody Magnus, as you said that this was an image of Alexander the Great, and you back up her by saying, yes, this is an image of Alexander the Great. It's not. It comes from the Talmud, and this is by Yohanan ben Zakkai. anyway, he was the leader of the Jewish peoples after the Jewish revolt. And Yohanan said he went to the emperor, so he's going to Nero, and he said the rebels are rebelling against you. And Nero said, how can I tell? And he said to him, send them an offering and see whether they will offer it upon the altar. So Yohanan sent with Bar Kamsa with a fine calf as an offering. While on the way, Bar Kamsa made a blemish on its upper lip, or as some say, on the white of its eye. Rabbis were inclined to offer it in order not to offend the government, the Roman government. But Rabbi Zechariah Abkulus said to them, well, people will say that blemished animals are offered on the altar. And then they proposed to kill Bar Kamsa, this particular guy, so he would not go and inform against them. Again, Rabbi Zechariah prevented that. And so they said, through the scrupulousness of Rabbi Zechariah, our house has been destroyed, our temple burnt, and we ourselves are exiled from our land. That's from Gittin 55 to 57. And that equates exactly with this scene here. It is quite obviously a scene involving Bar Kamsa giving the sacrificial calf to the high priest of Jerusalem.
So you're telling me that the Jewish high priest is going to accept a sacrificial calf from Nero?
No, that's the whole idea. They wanted him to reject it, and he did.
Okay, so that's what this is portraying here?
Yes.
So why would Jesus take a blemished calf?
To start the Jewish revolt.
So Jesus knew this would upset them?
Of course, because as a king of Odessa, it wouldn't make sense in your terms, because you're thinking of Jesus as being a poor carpenter who's not involved in politics. These people were involved in politics. The idea of the Odessan monarchy was not over to take over Judea. They wanted to take over Rome, because the throne of Rome became empty 2 years later. And of course, the purple cloak that he is wearing here is the cloak of the Emperor of Rome. And therefore, it's pretty obvious from this picture that he is a pretender to the throne of Rome. That's why he's wearing a purple cloak. This was not a simple revolt within Judea. This was a bid for the throne of Rome. And of course, within the Jewish revolt, the battle was between Vespasian and the Odessan Adiabene monarchy. They had this big battle in Judea, and the victor of that battle would sail to Rome as the next emperor.
If Jesus is working with Josephus, Paul, who's cozy with Rome, why does he want to rebel against Rome?
No, he wants to take over Rome. So we have opposition here. We have the rebel king who wants to take over Judea and Rome, and we have the Saul Josephus character who is working for Rome and therefore against this particular king. Remember that Saul changed sides. Saul and Josephus both changed sides. And so they were both being duplicitous, and they were working against this king because, well, I suppose in a way they were being...
This is, according to you, Mr. Ellis, the true foundation of Christianity. Has nothing to do with the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus or an early church started out of Jerusalem. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's actually a military coup by someone who later became a king, and then later was the basis for the legends of King Arthur.
Yeah, but you've got to remember that this king is not the foundation of Christianity. Jesus was never a Christian. He was a Nazarene Jew. The Christianity came from Saul, not from Jesus. Christianity has nothing to do with Jesus.
So you believe Jesus was taken down from the cross, though? Jesus, the red-headed white guy, taken down from the cross by Paul, aka Josephus, and then he was banished to Britain, and then when he was in Britain, he became the basis for the Arthurian legends. Is this correct?
Yeah, you're moving on a little bit here from what we're talking about, but yes, the leaders of the Jewish revolt were banished, and they were taken to prison in Rome initially. What Josephus doesn't tell us is what happened to them after that time. I think and there's good reason for thinking this. Remember, Arthurian legend, there's about 6,000 pages of Arthurian legend. It's a huge, great manual. When the Crusaders went to the East in 1098, where did they go to first of all? The first place they went to was Odessa. They didn't go to Jerusalem. They went to Odessa. What did they find in Odessa? I think they found the history of this particular king, the king we can see on the screen here. This is King.
Why did they go to Odessa, do you believe, Mr. Ellis?
Well, there's only two options. There is a story that they were invited there, but I think they probably had information that Odessa was central to this story. Because remember, Odessa is across the Euphrates. This is in Mesopotamia.
So I thought this information was lost, though, but you're saying they had an inside track, that there was something there that they should find?
Yeah, why not? I mean, traditions can run down many centuries through these royal families.
So they brought a whole army to Odessa just to find the secret history of Jesus the King.
If you thought you were related to this particular king, then of course you would. So they went to Odessa. We know they went to Odessa. And the question is then, what did they find when they went to Odessa? And of course,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear one thing you said. I know I interrupted you. I apologize for that. You said who was related to what king? I missed that. Could you please say that again?
Count Baldwin of Boulogne, if he had been related to this particular king we can see here, the king of Odessa.
So you believe that the count, this count you're talking about, was related to Jesus?
Well, we don't know. But
you're saying he thought he might have been? I'm just trying to track him. Okay.
Of course.
So he thought he might have been. So do you believe Jesus had offspring?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Do you not?
Mr. Ellis, do you believe that you're related to Jesus Christ?
No. Why should I?
No? Well, because you believe that, I think you look like him.
Oh, yeah, indeed. I'm a bit bolder than that. It's quite obvious that Jesus did have children. He was married to Mary Magdalene. Do you not believe that? Why do you not?
Oh, yeah. And that's something I kind of got a bone to pick with you. You quoted from the Gospel of Philip about, you said Jesus would often kiss Mary on the lips. But if you've ever seen that manuscript of the Gospel of Philip, Mr. Ellis, you would know there's a lacuna there. Yeah, and the lacuna is a hole. It's a physical. Yeah, it's a physical hole. So it doesn't say lips. It says and there's a hole. We don't know what it says. But when you quote it, you don't tell your audience that. You Dan Brown us. And it's not right, because Dan Brown's a novelist and you're portraying yourself as a historian. But there's a lacuna there.
Read my books, I include the lacuna.
Yeah, but I've heard you quote it without any kind of qualification.
I don't believe I have. If you read my books, I include the lacuna. But do you not believe that Jesus had a wife? He was a rabbi. He would have had a wife, yes?
Yes, he is married to the church.
No, the high priest of Jerusalem was supposed to have two wives. You know that. It says so in the Talmud. So was he married or was he not?
No, hey, can we put it back on the regular screen, or are you still sharing something? Because we're just looking at him while we're talking. I don't know if that's good for the audience. Let me
stop share. There we go.
No, I don't think so. But I mean, maybe that's something we could discuss in a future time if we do that. But I feel like we've really discussed a lot of topics. I'm a little worried about the audience being overburdened, and this might be a good stopping place.
Might chop it up into one or two portions, so it won't be too burdensome.
Okay,
we've been across a lot of topics, but I hope you see that you're attached to the classical chronology and the classical story, but there is other information that you have been disregarding for a long time. And I hope you look at that alternate information and include it in your chronology.
Well, I have a different hope for you. And it's that you would believe that Jesus, Yeshua, is the Messiah prophesied in the Old Testament scriptures, and recognize that he did live a sinless life, was crucified for the sins of sinners, and rose again to conquer death. And he's coming back, not as the king of Odessa, but the king of kings. And I hope that's a new history and future you would adopt.
There's a point. Do you believe he was a real king in that case? You call him the king of kings. Was he a king?
He's real king in a understanding of the fact that he, in his ultimate ontology,
so he
is pre-existent his birth. But upon this earth, he tells Pilate in John 18, my kingdom is not of this world. And it's not. He had no military power. this side of heaven. He told disciples to put away their swords, to turn cheeks, not
he also
to
told
start
them
coups against Rome.
He also told them to buy swords, and he said that I'd come not
And then
to
he
bring
said
peace.
2 was enough. Come on, man. That ain't no
He
rebellion.
said, I don't come to bring peace on this earth. I come to bring a sword.
Yes,
I
to
come
divide
to set...
households, because he
Yes,
knows that a mom will reject
precisely.
and then the
We
son
have
will
the
accept.
beginnings of a revolt there, don't we?
No, he says, if my kingdom was of this world, my followers would rise up right now. But you know what's fascinating about the passage I'm quoting from? It's from John 18. And here's why it's fascinating. Because the earliest fragment of any New Testament gospel we have as of this date is a small of John 18, recto verso. And it's a conversation with Jesus and Pilate. And that's the very thing under discussion in the larger manuscript. And it's a beautiful thing because it ends up in Egypt, all the way 125, 150, within the 2nd century. Early physical attestation to Jesus speaking to a historical figure, Pilate, and the conversation is about how his power is not derived from an earthly source. So you have made up a Jesus that does not exist.
Respectfully, I would say that he does exist, because this is the problem with your story. Your Jesus doesn't exist. My Jesus does exist. He's a real character. He's a king of Odessa.
All hail the redhead ginger.
And on that note, Vince, thank you. You've made my job today very, very easy. Number one. Number two, this is such a broad and vast topic that I would like to do a part 2 at some point in the future, but thank you to you both. In closing, is there anything that you would like to say to each other in closing?
I don't know. Vocab, you got anything?
Well, you know, I've talked to some Christ mythicist guys before, local and national. You know, I've done dialogues recorded with Fitzgerald and Carrier. And that's not my main area these days. I deal with more urban cults like Hebrew Israelites and Kemetic guys and stuff like that. But, you know, I still understand how important it is and enjoy doing and stuff like that. But, you know, those guys seem tame compared to a lot of your theories. And I do understand, Mr. Ellis, that's why a lot of the Christ mythicists that would disagree with a lot of stuff I said here today might be rooting for me a little bit in this dialogue, because even other Christ mythicists realize Mr. Ellis's methodology is undisclosed, and when it is disclosed, it's poor. And that's not saying anything against you as a person or your vast amounts of information that you store in your head and you include in your books. Nothing against that, but the methodology is really it's such a foundational issue. It's like trying to, you know, turn something into gold during the days of alchemy. You're never going to get the right result because your methods are all wrong. And I think that's a very serious issue. You really got to disclose what your methodology is and then stick with it. Until then, it's going to be difficult to look at what you're promoting as something that we should include in the historical conversation. And I don't mean that to disparage you or to hurt anyone's feelings. I understand you've written volumes, and writing books is hard. I have not written as much as you. And I respect that. But I'm just saying the methodology is a really fundamental problem. And if you could see that, I think you would get farther, because I know sometimes you feel kind of like maybe picked on, or these guys are trying to shut you out of the conversation. But I really believe it could be different if you would be willing to revisit some key methodological issues in how you do history.
Well, respectfully, I would have to disagree, because my methodology is sound.
Okay.
What you have is characters who are all missing from the historical record, and searching for those characters in the historical record is going to be difficult because the information is fragmentary. And we have secure evidence from Josephus that he's not telling you the full truth, and therefore you've got to divine the truth. And so my methodology, which is very sound, is to make sure that I have at least half a dozen, at the very least, links between two characters before I start to conflate them. And with the Josephus Saul, I have about 15 links between these two characters. That is sound methodology. And there's nothing else we can do. I mean, you can go down the the Richard Carrier route and do it by mathematics, but I think that is nonsense as well. You cannot do yes, precisely. You cannot do history via mathematics, and I think you'll probably agree with that as well. You know, Bayesian mathematics takes no place in historical research. All we can do is get the similarities and put them together. And what I'm doing is creating a jigsaw puzzle. And it just so happens that all of the pieces in my jigsaw puzzle do fit together very nicely. And they also provide a picture. It's a slightly different picture to the one you're used to, because the Jesus character becomes a real king instead of a symbolic king, as I presume you see him as.
For now.
Yeah, well, yes. So you say he's going to become a king later. So you do agree with me. Yeah.
But more than the king of Odessa.
Well, yeah, I think he was pretty powerful, the king of Odessa, but there we go.
So powerful, anyway, no one knows but Ralph Ellis.
Well, yeah, it's a history that has been kept silent for at least 600 years. I think the Templars knew all about it. But yes, it has been lost from popular history, unfortunately. But now people know about Odessa. Everyone is now talking about Odessa, which is just great. So,
well, my Armenian Christian friends, they've been knowing, you know, I got, as I mentioned, Syrian and Assyrian and Egyptian, and I didn't mention Jordanian, but that's in Lebanese. My Armenian Christian friends, they know about it, you know. But I got you. But hey, guys, I really do got to take off, and I've enjoyed the dialogue. And let's link up later and see what can be done. Are we good? Am I?
Yeah.
I'm not like. I'm not leaving early or anything, right? We're good.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
All right, you guys have a beautiful day. I got to take off and get into some stuff. Have a great day. God bless. Peace.